So welcome to the Eat and Meet Career Information Panel session, and today we are going to be talking about administration of justice. I'm Andre Luck, Career Services Manager at PVCC, and our guests today are Ronnie Roberts, Chief of Police for the Louisa County Police Department. He's retired from the Charlottesville Police Department as Lieutenant after 40 years of service. He was responsible for the Neighborhood Services Bureau, which oversaw the School Resource Officer Program, the Traffic Unit, and the Community Policing Unit. He was also the spokesperson for the Police Department, responding to print and television media outlet queries. Brad Cruz is a trooper recruiter for the Virginia State Police. He was a local police officer for 3.5 years prior to joining the Virginia State Police, and he has been a trooper for over 11 years. And Craig Buckley is Captain and Commander of the Criminal Investigations Division for the City of Fairfax Police Department. He manages the department's sworn and civilian applicant processing, policy development, and implementation related to employment and criminal investigations procedures. He is the commander of the Crisis Negotiations Team. He is also a certified public manager. He has an associate's degree in Administration of Justice from Northern Virginia Community College, a bachelor's degree in Human Resource Management from the University of Richmond, and a Master of Public Administration degree from George Mason University. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you.
I'm going to start by finding out a little bit about your background. What attracted you to law enforcement as a career? Ronnie, why don't you start?
Well, I think that it initially started as you're growing up, your interaction that you had with law enforcement. I was fortunate enough there was a trooper that lived pretty close by in the neighborhood, and we didn't have public transportation to the school, so you had to walk to a neighborhood school. And this trooper would get out in the mornings after he got off the midnight shift, and he would always engage the kids that were on their way to school. And that kind of really inspired and of course, interested me. And that pretty much was that first encounter. As we say, first impressions will always be a lasting impression. And I remember that at a very early age when I was in elementary school, meeting that person who worked for the state police.
So it started as a youth.
Yes.
Okay. Brad, same question.
Yeah, I started out when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I joined the Danville, Pennsylvania County Explorer, which is like a cadet program. In doing that, I got to meet and see a lot of different officers from local police departments as well as sheriff's offices in and across the state. Also had some interaction with troopers and federal agents. They would come in and speak from time to time. So obviously, from a very early age, I grew and had a passion for law enforcement.
And Craig?
Well, it really kind of found me. I wasn't looking to go into it. Actually, my dream was to be an attorney, and I started an Explorer program as well, in a judicial Explorer program in the community I grew up in, and for a couple of years hung out with a bunch of defense attorneys. And so you probably would have never thought about me going into sworn law enforcement, but that's kind of how it happened. Basically, I had a choice of that. I grew up on a farm, and farming at the time was not profitable. So, and I needed to be gainfully employed. So it was really just by chance that I fell into it. I saw an opening and I applied, and once I got into it, I fell in love with it, and I've stuck with it for 23 years now.
Okay. Well, what is the primary function of your department? Brad, can you answer that question?
The primary function of our department is from a trooper standpoint, is motor vehicle safety. We handle anything as it relates to motor vehicle safety, which would be enforcement. It would be handling disabled vehicles, working motor vehicle crashes, highway hazards, basically anything involving a motor vehicle or the highway. We're in charge of keeping that safe and making sure folks get from point A to point B safely each and every day.
Okay. What about you, Craig?
We're a full-service agency, so we have a patrol side of it where we do traffic safety, traffic enforcement pretty heavily, and then we have a criminal investigation side. So we provided all the services to our citizens in our city as far as criminal investigations, such as that.
So, Ronnie, how would you describe the culture of the Louisa Police Department?
I would say that it's not a large community like what we have here in Charlottesville. You've got an area of about 35,000 population-wise, and folks that work and commute to the Charlottesville area for work, as well as the other side. If you're on the east end of the county, they actually work in the Richmond area, but they all reside there. It's a very small community, one high school, one middle school. All the students know each other. The families are very well known. A lot of families stay. They don't leave. Some of them go off to the college. They come back and give back to the community. But I think that it is a community that is very supportive of its law enforcement services, from the sheriff's office and the police department. And it's a great place to really work, really, in comparison to working in a university community where you don't have that. In Louisa, you have people that are long-term residents that work generally outside the area. You got some folks that work in the area, but a lot of it is outside.
So, Craig, you work in the Metro DC area, so you have probably a little bit of everything: urban, suburban, city.
Yes.
I know you're with the city, but you kind of touch in many different areas, right?
That's correct. Yeah. In an area such as ours, we've really evolved so much more into kind of almost a regional type policing model where in my particular division, we have multiple people who are on different task force groups. Obviously, in the National Capital Region, we have the Joint Terrorism Task Force. We have the Northern Virginia Gang Task Force. There's a HIDA Drug Task Force in the area. There Secret Service Financial Crimes Task Force, Secret Service Electronics Crimes Task Force. So there's more of a regional aspect to it, just because it really doesn't matter where you are. People can very quickly, jump from Fairfax to Arlington to Alexandria to the district, to back out to Loudoun County or wherever.
And how large is your staff?
We have 69 sworn officers is what we're allowed to have, so we're a very small shop. There's only about 12. There's 12 that are within our criminal investigations division, and again, if without that regional policing model, it'd be very hard for us to extend our reach beyond to actually address criminal activity that ends up coming into our jurisdiction.
Okay. Now, Brad, you work with many law enforcement agencies. Which ones do you work with, and who determines the jurisdiction?
So what happens is with our agency, we work with. When I worked the road as a trooper, I would constantly work with our local and local sheriff's office, local police departments, because a lot of times, even though we may have one or two troopers that are working a county, or maybe 3 or 4, a lot of times when we're on a call, we're by ourselves. So we work really closely. We help the sheriff's office out. I worked down in Halifax for a number of years. We carried a county radio with us, and we backed the deputies up. They backed us up. We worked really closely together, even down to working with the towns. We would go into town and help them out on calls that they needed. So we work really closely with them. Our task force guys, because again, we do primarily on the uniform side, traffic, motor vehicle safety. We are a police department, so we handle anything that is criminal as well as traffic. But on the other side of our department, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation side, that's a whole nother section. And those special agents, they work with federal agents all the time. Our drug guys or drug task force, they work with DEA. We have a fugitive unit. They work with U.S. Marshals. Some of the insurance stuff, they deal with maybe Secret Service. And then, of course, our homicide crime scene techs will work with FBI on different cases that they may be working on. So we're working all the time and building our relationships with other departments and even to the federal side as well.
So you mentioned the uniform side, but there's also a civilian side. So can each of you tell me, if you have a civilian staff and what type of jobs they do?
Civilian staff in most of the police departments locally, they generally handle either our records management systems and making sure that the data collection is coming in from the officers in the field. They also take care of your payroll, making sure those...
That's important.
A very important aspect of what happens in their career is making sure that each man and woman gets paid at their appropriate pay period. So making sure the time records are kept. They also take care of a lot of correspondence that come into the police department from community as well as other organizations that may be doing a background check or asking for particular information on a case, and it's a communication line that they actually play a vital role. They go through typically the same type of background investigation as an employee that would be the same as any law enforcement officer other than some of the polygraph issues. But the other side of it is that their layers are peeled back and examined because they're in constant contact with a lot of confidential information and hearing and seeing. The civilian side also works with a forensic side. We do forensic work. We have civilians that work in the forensic area. When I was with Charlottesville, we had a number of interns that came from this community college that helped us with their crime scene tech work. And it was really, I mean, logging evidence, assisting us, taking evidence to Richmond, to the crime lab. These are the kind of things that the civilian side is what we could call the support efforts. And it's really important. They play a vital role in the day-to-day operations of every organization that's out here, whether you're a small community, large agency, or as with the state police.
What about your area, Brad? Would you have the same type of support?
Yes, we have a civilian side as well. And a lot of our civilians do several different things. Each of our area offices have a secretary, and as we say a lot of times, our secretaries do the majority of our work or run the office for us, because they do. They help us out dramatically. But each of the area offices do have a secretary. And then we also have dispatchers. We have our own dispatch. So all 7 divisions, the state's broken down into 7 divisions, and all 7 divisions have a dispatch center. So we're all the time looking for dispatchers to come work for our department. We also have, just another example, we have in Richmond, we have a lot of human resources personnel that are on the civilian side. We have data analysis folks. We also have folks in payroll and that sort of thing. We have a lot of computer information type positions where they work on our computers. They make sure that their systems are up and running. Another example, we have our sex offender registration unit. There's troopers that are assigned to that unit. That is a specialty of ours. We also have a civilian side of that unit. They also help those troopers out on the civilian side. So we have a lot of civilian opportunities as well as sworn.
Craig?
Pretty much just like Chief Roberts and Trooper Cruz mentioned, same thing with the exception of for our crime scene work, for any evidence handling, we only use sworn people for that in our department, but we have call takers and dispatchers. Those are civilian. Being a full-service city, we have crossing guards, we have parking enforcement people. You know, they're considered non-sworn. They perform a vital function and wear a uniform. But but one thing that we do have as well, in addition, is a very robust volunteers and police service program. Being in the DC metro area, we have a lot of retired government workers, and you know, they're gracious enough to come and volunteer at our department and bring their training and expertise. You know, fortunately for us, several of them have experience in IT work, and data analysis and everything else, and we truly reap the benefits of that. It's able to keep our budget small, still provide a good service to the community. They live in our community, so they're giving back to their same neighbors and friends. So we do utilize that quite a bit.
Well, you know, a lot of us know that there are many crime scene investigation shows on TV. NCIS, CIS, and the list goes on and on and on. and you are the commander of the criminal investigation unit. How is the reality different from what we see on TV?
Well, nothing is finished in an hour. If you want to call the commercials, those are usually the, I guess probably the breaks to get some refreshments and stuff, because generally a typical crime scene extends for quite a while, well past an hour. It's generally extremely tedious work. You know, the way when a new detective comes up, or when they're going through the process for openings that we have, we just ran a process and had several applicants for that. But when what I explain to them is, when you're a patrol officer, you go to a critical incident, you go to a crime scene, you work from the inside out. You know, there's three particular things that you have to do, and if you don't do them when you first go to a scene and you screw just one of them up, you might as well kind of forget everything else. But you work from the beginning of protecting the crime scene, rendering aid, and then establishing whether or not you even have a crime or what. From the CID perspective, we always work from the outside in. So you go to the crime scene and you look at the overall, and then you work your way into the middle to where it is, so you don't miss anything. And then you go back and do it. So, you know, we'll have two different teams that are going in first, and then another one that comes in behind, and we'll do a final walkthrough. And if we still aren't comfortable with that, then we'll do another final walkthrough to collect as much as we can. There are also other things that they don't necessarily show on TV. You know, the concerns that you have of exposures, drug exposures, bloodborne pathogen exposures. These are all things that typically are just kind of glossed over on TV that you don't see. And you know, you have to always worry about getting exposure to a drug to drugs, and fentanyl in particular these days. And then you know, you lose a person out of that. Obviously, they're off to the hospital and hopefully recover. But you know, you've always got to have somebody else to put up. We don't have unlimited staff either, like they seem to have on TV. They just get on the phone and call somebody else, and 10 more people show up. We don't have that. There's definitely a finite number of people that are qualified to be able to work a crime scene. So, and you have to protect those people and certainly give them the space and time that they need to do a thorough job.
And I would imagine it's very labor intensive, and you're meeting multiple deadlines, and you have pressure from other people who think that you need to have resolution immediately, right?
Well, that's correct. So a lot of times when you collect up evidence, we have a laboratory at our station, so and we have folks that are trained for that, and so a lot of the work, much of the lower to intermediate level work we can do there. Other stuff we have to send out. And what you don't realize is you want something back in a day, you want something back in a week. Well, it's 6 or 7 months later, you finally get the results back of what you've been waiting for. And so it's definitely not at all like television.
Well, Ronnie, you worked with community policing. I think you were in charge of the
Yes, sir.
community policing unit
Yes.
For the City of Charlottesville Police Department. Can you describe or explain to us the concept of community policing?
Well, let me just say this first off. The most important aspect of it is the social capital, and that is the reaction and the interaction that takes place between the law enforcement officer and the members of our community. You think about if you have an agency that has 100 personnel and how many people they interact with every day. That is very important. We call that social capital. And when we walk into a store, an officer picks up a cup of coffee, and you see 2 or 3 of those employees in there. And you think about how many people we come into contact with in one day. We take officers that, which is very important, the communication skills. And I look across here and I look at the millenniums here in this room. And one of the biggest problems that we're finding with a lot of the young people coming into the profession is the lack of communication skills, because most of us today pick up a phone and we text if we want to talk to somebody. My best friend, his son is in California, in Los Angeles, lives there, and he can't get him to come on the phone. But the only way he can get him, he can get on a text and text him, and he'll respond back and forth. So the most important aspect on the community policing side of it is being able to communicate with everyone in your community, from those who live in the penthouse to those who live in the lower social economical areas of our Commonwealth. And I think it's very important that you have the right people that are on the bus to make sure that they are able to communicate with everyone in your community. But also, not only communicating, but understanding the challenges that they have in those areas, whether it be housing issues, whether it be a broken window in a particular building, and of course, where we would actually go to other parts of the government that need to take care of or take some responsibility to help us clean it up, whether it's a lot that someone has failed to cut the grass throughout the summer and it's gotten up pretty high. You're getting the resources there in order to clean this up. It's called, it's about making sure our community looks great, as well as serving what we call problem-solving issues that an individual has, whether it's a home next door that's rental property that has a lot of music coming from it. How do we address it? Let's deal with the individual who lives there or the person that's a tenant. If that doesn't work, let's go to the property owner. You have to drill down and fix things. But also, we get in and we start doing things with our young children too. Because one of the things that it's happened, I think that all of us in this room here have seen the negativity that has come across from the public TV about officers involved in their interactions with our community. We've got to reestablish that social capital that is so important, understanding who we are and what we're here for. We're here to help people. I mean, none of us ever got in this job ever with the intent of ever hurting a person at all. We all got in here to make quality of life issues so important for our communities where we serve, the people. You are the people. And of course, when we look around, our students is helping them to get over to the next level in their life and in their career, whether it be a law enforcement officer, whether it be a firefighter working in the public safety arena or working in the military. These are the people that we try to help get through this process and to get them on. And community policing is something that, if you look back in the 1960s, there were people that walked a beat and getting out and talking to people and meeting people. You just don't ride around in a police car. I mean, it looks nice, got the decals and everything else. You get a full tank of gas and everything else to be able to drive about. But the real part of it is getting out of that automobile and engaging our community so you know who your officer is that's working your beat, so that you know who he or she is. And we're human. We have families too. We have children. My son, one of my sons came here to this community college and then wound up going to George Mason University. And the other one went to the University of Virginia. One of them, he did try being in police work. He tried it. It wasn't for him. And I'll tell you this, there's some of us that don't want to do this kind of work. And you need to make those decisions pretty early on. But community policing, bottom line of it is reestablishing our community relations with our people. Social capital, how we interact with you every day. It's so important. And going down the roadway, and you think about it, when you see a trooper on the side of the road or you see an officer, take your hand and put it up. We're trying to build those relationships. We've had some things that have happened, absolutely, but it's not us against you. We're all in this together. I can't do my job without your support. You, your parents, your cousins, uncles, aunts. I mean, we're all here together in this thing and trying to improve quality of life and community issues.
So active listening and building relationships will be two of the skills that are necessary for community policing, right? Now, Craig, you head up the crisis negotiations team.
That's correct. Yes.
What exactly does that entail?
What we have at our particular department, and many departments have them, and but our particular agency, we have 10 specially trained officers in negotiation skills. Generally what happens is it's usually in a barricade situation. Sometimes it occurs on traffic stops, but it's people who are in crisis. We have CIT trained officers as well who are essentially they do the on the street interactions for crisis intervention. But a lot of people in a mental health crisis, sometimes they will try to hurt themselves, hurt others. It becomes a barricade situation sometimes, and not always in a house, sometimes in a vehicle as well. We've had some traffic stops that have wound up with people who are in a crisis situation, feeling like they want to harm themselves, and we had to shut down parts of roadways and stuff in order to be able to negotiate with them. So we have a group of 10 dedicated people, and we train for that once every other month. We train. We have some fantastic electronic equipment that assists us with that job, which thankfully we got from our Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So most agencies can't afford the equipment or the price of the equipment that you need in order to be able to successfully manage and address a barricade situation and someone in crisis, because there's a lot of factors there. Depending upon where it is, especially in a highly congested area like ours, you've got to take into account what are the risk factors that are going on there, if they're armed or not, the evacuation of people nearby, or if it's going to be a shelter in place, and addressing those things. The other thing you have to contend with is that statistically the average barricade situation runs a minimum of 4 hours to up to about 7 hours. That's the average. About 90% are usually resolved within 4 to 7 hours. So you have to worry about the elements. We work hand in hand with our EST team, or some people call them SWAT, but we call them an emergency services team. And so you're out there in the heat and elements. The last one we did, it was about 90 degrees out and about 100% humidity. And we were out there. Some members were out there for almost about 6 hours. Others were only there for the 4 hours. So it's a little bit trying. You have to be a patient person, very patient, and you have to recognize that the people that are in crisis that you're helping, we're not there to solve their problem. We're there to help talk them through so they solve the problem themselves. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. You can't make someone come out, or you can't make someone change their behavior unless you can talk them through it to where they come around and recognize this probably isn't the right solution. And so, again, it takes a lot of patience and understanding.
And a cool head.
Yeah, that would be correct. Yeah.
Well, now, we have a community college, as you know. We have the criminal justice and police science programs. What is the role of the police academy? Is it a requirement to get a uniform position in law enforcement? What does the police academy do? Anyone?
Well, I think that the basic law enforcement police training facilities that are across the Commonwealth, and of course many agencies have their own. The larger agencies, Department of State Police has its own. What their job is to teach the law enforcement officer all the skills that he or she would need, what we call a basic skills that you would need in order to come out here and perform those required job. But also that that academy can be as long as 27 to 29 weeks for the entry-level person. And that encompasses academic as well as physical. And that PT in the mornings, getting up and having to do the run and everything else, you start out very slowly with them and begin to work your way up. But the PT portion of it can be a part of it. But I will tell you this, in the academy, you generally find out within the first month who's going to stay and who's going to go. It's difficult. I mean, the academic side of it is very challenging. And if you're in the entry level, some of those credits that you actually, you gain credits from that actually applies towards your associate's degree, or in the program here that they have at Piedmont. We actually have utilized that for entry-level officers that are coming in. But the other side, too, is that in the academy, it also teaches you structure, discipline. It also gets you into an environment of a regimented atmosphere, and about having yourself squared away. It's similar to that of the military, but actually you're taught constitutional law. You're taught about how arrest powers, what your arrest powers are. You're taught about the Constitution, First Amendment, which it is about your ability to have freedom of speech. The Fifth Amendment, we talk about those areas. They're covered constitutionally. We have attorneys that come in and teach these areas of expertise to the entry-level officer. Then once you even get out of the academy, then you've got to go through probably 12 to 16 weeks of field training with a certified officer who will evaluate you. And we work you on each shift. You don't get to work in one area, you work on each one of the shifts to get acclimated to working nights, days, and evenings. And yes, we work holidays. We don't have we work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 12 months a year. And you work those holidays. And I can tell you where most young people that enter into this occupation wound up going, and then a lot of them, when you start in an agency, you're going to go to the midnight shift or the evening shift is where it winds up being. And it's very difficult. If you have a family, it can be difficult on your children. But you got to make those sacrifices. And I always say this, it's like a special calling. When you go to church, you think about the pastor or you think about the priest that's there. The thing you have to remember is a special calling for him. It is also a special calling for those individuals that step into this profession, because it is quite demanding on every man and every woman that takes this job.
We have several veterans in the audience, and I'm wondering, is military experience helpful, or is it a good fit for your jobs? Brad, why don't you take that question?
Okay. Yes, it is. I tried to spend the majority of my summer going to different military bases. We do some heavy recruiting around our military bases, and it's an easy transition for somebody coming from the military over to the Virginia State Police. A lot of that reason is because a lot of the principles and the things that you learn and you do as a military officer or soldier can be easily transitioned over. Let's just take, for an example, shooting. A lot of the things that they do in the military are the same things that we do. So you got shooting, defensive driving, military drills, marching, PT. Air Academy is a paramilitary style academy, which basically it means it's more like boot camp. Not as bad as boot camp, but it's kind of like that. So somebody that's coming from the military over, it is an easy transition. All we're doing is basically changing some of the aspects and the things they've learned in the military over to police work. But the principles and stuff are still there. So, again, we have a 29-week academy, and it's a live-in academy. It's not like a regional academy where, for instance, you would get to go home every evening. You do have to stay at our academy Sunday night through Thursday night. That's the way it currently is. So Sunday night, our sergeants will ask that they come in anywhere between 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and basically that's just for accountability. Once you get there, you really don't do a lot Sunday night other than get ready for Monday morning. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night, day and night, you're there at the academy, and then Thursday, anywhere between 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the evening, you get released to go home. So you get Thursday night, you get Friday, Saturday, and the majority of the day Sunday, depending on where you live at home. So that's kind of a little bit about our academy, a little bit about the way it's kind of run and that sort of thing. But it is 29 weeks for us.
We have time for a couple of questions from the audience. If you have any questions, would you raise your hand, please? I'll be Phil Donahue.
Hi, can you guys tell me one thing that you love about your job and one thing that you wish you could change about your job, and why?
I would say to you, the thing that is most rewarding is when you interact with someone and you improve the quality of life for them. It may be an incident, they were a victim of a crime, and we're able to recover, help them through this, walk them through the system, the criminal justice system, and aspects of being able to guide them where they can get resources to help them. As the captain said from Fairfax, the CIT program, when you see people that are off their medicine and you're able to get them the necessary help at a medical facility, and then they come back and thank you for what you did to help them get their life straight, there's no money there's no dollar figure attached to that. It's so important because we're able to give something back and see someone make a change. And that is also when you have interaction with someone that's been involved in a criminal case, and they may be the arrestee. You may have turned their life around, may have saved them from being involved in an alcohol-related crash that night when you made the arrest, and they come back and they say, you know, I recognize that I had a problem, and I want to thank you for what you did. That's the reward that just comes back to you. You know, you reap what you sow. You really do. And being respectful when we have to say those words, you're under arrest.
And the thing you wish you could change, really, when you have a family, are all the missed events.
Yeah.
Because the job consumes your life. And you have to realize that 50% of your life or more is spent at work, helping others. And, you know, you just hope you have a good, strong family at home, and, you know, they don't hold it against you when you finally make it back home.
One of the good things about our job, and my job in particular, is we do a number of different things aside from enforcement. I was a crime prevention specialist for a number of years, still am. Another thing that I do is I like to go into the high schools. We have this program, it's called YOVISO. Some of you may have heard of it, you may not have. But YOVISO stands for Youth of Virginia Speak Out About Traffic Safety. And what this program is all about, and what I've spent the last 2 or 3 years of my career working on, is going into high schools and putting this club together. And that's really rewarding because it's shown that it's almost a 50% reduction in teen fatalities at schools that participate in this program. So I'm helping to save, I feel like, you know, at the end of the day, at the end of the school year, I'm helping to save teens' lives. I'm educating them on the importance of driving safe, even from a very early age, starting out in driver's ed, and trying to encourage them to not drink and drive, to not text and drive, to not do those things that that maybe they see their friends or their family members do, to try to encourage them, hey, how does that, as a parent, if your child says something to you and says, hey, mom or dad, can you put your phone down, or can you put your seatbelt on, and they're buckled up, that kind of speaks to you. And so we kind of use the students to go around in the school and in the community, and we try to spread this message about, you know, driving safely and not driving distracted and not driving DUI. And all of that. So it's very rewarding to see all that come together and help reduce teen fatalities.
I would say this to you, which is also very important for, I would say, for all of us in this occupation field, is that our partner is a very important part, because they are the ones that support us when we can't be there to pick up the child for child care afterwards. After school programs or graduation that you missed, or a Halloween night when you've made plans to go out with your children, take them trick-or-treating, and you're actually working a fatal accident where an 11-year-old boy was just killed. And then you go back home and you know your wife is taking care of that, but then you come back in and you see your children in a bed asleep, and you say a prayer there every night, thanking the good Lord that, you know, that my child was okay. And I'm thinking about another family and what they'll be going through for the next years, that they'll never, that empty bedroom. And in a lot of times, being able to have a good partner that you can sound off to, who understands the things that you see and things that you just don't go back to the office and talk about with everybody else. You talk it over with your partner. And I mean, she's been with me for 37 years, and God bless her, she's many times that we've missed a lot of those events with her and our children. So, and I echo back what the captain said. It's very important. We do miss a lot of things.
How have y'all's respective recruiting processes changed over the course of your careers in terms of qualifications, requirements, what you look for? You know, what's different? What has remained the same? How have you adapted to, you know, society changing in different ways?
Well, we're not Colorado, where they have marijuana that's legal. But I will tell you this, is that, you know, we can't take it in the military, We just had a big discussion. I just came back from the Virginia Chiefs Conference, and we had staff that came in from Colorado to talk about that. If you're in the military, my son works for the Department of Intelligence, the oldest one does. He can't have it. He was stationed in Colorado Springs, if you know anything about that area. That's where he was stationed at. You can't have it. In police work, you can't have it. It's not legal in Virginia, so we're not going to have that. But the other side, too, it is a challenge because we see so many millenniums that get into it, and they're gone within 3 to 5 years. We like to keep you, and we try to compete. I was just talking to the trooper here. We were talking about, being able to recruit and retain. That's what's so important. So we try to, and you have to remember, we don't sign the checks and we don't write those checks. The people that actually are the ones that fund and ensure that the funding comes down to the local agencies as well as the state. You got your legislatures and your elected officials, which is very important to retain because money is a part of it. And like everything else, everybody likes bells and whistles. They like the new toys. They like to have the car. And those are the kind of things that are very important. So we try to work with our councils as well as our board of supervisors and the legislatures to ensure that that money comes down so we're able to recruit and retain. That's so important. We get you there. We get the training done. You spend 29 weeks going through this academy, or 27, and then all of a sudden, within 2 years, you're going, this is just not for me. And we try to do the right thing, and we assemble committees together. You sit down, you open the dialogue between our elected officials so that we can keep people like you and others that want to come into this profession.
I would, if I could follow up with that. Look, recruitment-wise, I think it seemed like to me your question, if I understood it, kind of had two parts to it. One, how do we recruit differently? And two, it almost seemed like had our standards changed, or what did we look at? Does that seem correct? Okay. Recruitment-wise, I know when I was starting out, maybe the same with you all, I went to a high school cafeteria and I took a test with 450 other people.
Yep.
2 weeks later, I got a letter that said I came out third. That's all I knew. A few weeks after that, I got another letter saying come in for an interview. They were turning people away at the door when I went there, because it was at capacity. Because then you could apply, or you could just show up and apply on scene, and so that's how it was. These days we don't turn people away at the door because we don't get quite the same volume. So that recruitment part, I would think most agencies. I can't believe mine is unique. There's not most agencies in the 90s did not have to go out to where the qualified applicants could be. The qualified applicants came to the agencies. I don't know if you guys saw anything any different, but as far as the standards go, no. You can't change the standards. When I came on, my mentors were officers from the 60s and 70s who had been trained by gentlemen from the 50s. Policing hasn't changed because one sounding part of the whole philosophy and everything there is a person's integrity. The only person that can take your integrity away is you. No one can change that. So you either have that or you don't. That's something you can't bend on, and a lot of the process we go through is vetting out a person's integrity because you're going to put a lot of trust in that. We can, where we are in my department, we were fortunate enough. We got a Department of Justice body-worn camera grant. We were one of the few in the nation that got it. There was only a select few that got it. We were one of those. And so every officer in my department wears a body-worn camera. But for years we've had every officer mic'd up, probably for the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years, maybe longer. But we've had in-car cameras, and they all had microphones, and as long as you stayed within 50 feet of the car, everything was still being recorded. So we always had that openness there. But it doesn't matter. You can put all the cameras you want. If you bend some things and allow some people to come on that have kind of some failings in their integrity or issues or questions that could be there, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because, as you can see, it doesn't take much to look in the paper or on the internet It really only takes one person. You know, you could have a department with 800 members, and 799 of them would never do anything wrong. But it'll be the one that'll do something wrong that makes the paper, and then all of them are branded the same. And, you know, and that's probably the hardest part. It's a struggle, you know, to actually get qualified people in and get people to understand, you know, why they're looked at so carefully. Because the trust that you're given, it's always, once you put a badge on, it's your, you know, when it comes down to the officer's word against another person's word, you know, the courts, everyone along the way has to know in their mind and in their hearts that they can take the officer's word over the other person's word if there's a discrepancy there. And so that's kind of the biggest struggle. That's just why really standards, you can't really bend them, you can't really change them.
I'm going to wrap up now, but I want you to know that these gentlemen will be here after we finish, in case you have any questions. But I do have another question for you all. What type of job openings do you have, or do you hire for? What type of internships, and how do you apply?
We have openings for internship. I've taken a number of interns from this community college, from those that are accountants to help us work on some budgetary issues, for those that are interested in law enforcement with collecting data, working to pull together numbers to look at hiring additional people and putting those numbers together. But I don't have any openings now. I have a full staff, and we've been blessed with that since January of 2016. So we've really had very little movement. I was giving one of my friends a little bit of a nudge earlier that there's a couple of them in our area that are talking about maybe jumping ship, but we're hoping that we can compete competitively. But no.
Well, right now we are hiring. We are looking to fill. We traditionally run 2 academies a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And right now we're hiring. We have an open application, so there's no deadline. And then we also have for anybody that may be a prior police officer, we have what we call a lateral school that we're also accepting applications for right now as well. So we have 2 different positions as far as troopers and sworn positions are available that you could apply for. I'll just say this as far as the governor and the General Assembly agreed to increase our starting salary. So our starting salary now is $44,290. So that's what you'll start out at the academy making, and then after a year it goes up from $44,290 when you come off probation to $48,719. So that's what the new salary and stuff is now. Keep in mind that it does take about 10 months to go through the process with us, and you can be 20 when you apply. You have to be 21 on the date of hire for us. So you can actually be 20 and apply and go through the process. You just have to really work closely with your recruiter to make sure that we get you in an academy that's after your 21st birthday.
Well, for us, you can just go to www.fairfaxva.gov. There's a link in there under the jobs to apply to us. We've got 7 openings right now, so we're looking for 7 people that are the right fit for that. And our salaries are very competitive. Up in our region, we actually have a large number of certified officers from other agencies that also apply to us to come to us. We're entry level, we're I think ranked 3rd in our region. Once you graduate the academy, we're pretty much number 1 for the most part. So depending upon how you look at it. At our department, the salary you are paid is the salary you make. You're not required to spend additional money for anything. Dry cleaning, uniform allowance, we do all of that. Any alterations, we provide all the equipment. There's free parking, because up in our area, there's some departments where you have to pay to park at your own place, which I can't quite understand. But we don't have valet parking, but we've got a secure lot that you can pull into. Either way, like I said, we have 7 openings. And we constantly, as being a small department, we have a continuous number of openings. When I first started, it was rare. I think when I got hired, they'd been 4 years without an opening before I came along. In CID, in the portion where I do, I handle the hiring, so all the applicants come through me in some fashion or another. I think that this current academy, with the number that we've hired in the last 12 months since I got transferred back there, I think that brings me up to exactly 30 people out of 69 that we're allowed to have that I've touched in some fashion or another. So, and like I said, there's 7 more there. So, if anyone's interested or you know anyone that would be a good candidate, then please apply. One thing I would say, and we're 120 miles apart. Chief Roberts and I'm in Fairfax, he's in Charlottesville, or he worked in Charlottesville, now he's in Louisa, but one of the fellows I work with and who worked for me for a period of time when I was a patrol commander, I think Chief Roberts was his FTO or something, so, and God help him, somehow he survived it, so. But touch on what he said. Communication skills are very, very important, extremely important. I tell people this all the time, especially young applicants. Go out and get a job at a restaurant or something in the service industry, because if you have to deal with difficult people, that will help you better. And if you think you have, when we do the interviews and you come in and we ask you the 6 or 7 questions to kind of warm you up, look, there's no secret to those questions. They're just basic questions. We want to be able to see if you can carry on a 10-minute conversation with us. Because really, when you're out on that first 10 minutes, when you go out to take a report from someone, or you're out in the community and you're interacting with someone, that's what gives you the label of whether or not you're a professional, competent person, which in turn gives our departments, gives every department in the country the same labeling. So that's what that whole interview is. There's no need to be nervous or anything like that. If you do apply and you get a chance like that, always look at that. The biggest thing they want to see is how can you communicate, okay? Because that's what saves everything, to be honest with you. At the end of the day, you can talk people into handcuffs. Yeah. That's always better than having to get into a struggle with them. And like I said, my mentors were from the 70s and stuff when I came on, and it was very simple, what our mission was. To protect those who can't protect themselves, the children, the elderly, the handicapped, and to try to avoid getting into a fight with somebody and try to talk them into the handcuffs. Because ultimately, you're going to see that person later. You're going to see them in court, you're going to see them in the community, and you don't want to make an enemy. Right. Okay? Is basically it. I'm sorry, I know I added some things in there.
Very true. I want to thank each of you. Thank you for coming. Captain Craig Buckley, Trooper Brad Cruz, Chief Ronnie Roberts. Thank you so much. And they will be here. They will be here to stay if you want to talk to them. And behind me, there's a table of materials that they have for you as well. Thank you again.